Thank you, sir.
Shane Ardern.
Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to rise in this debate on the Dairy Industry Restructuring Bill, but before I start my discussion, I need to declare an interest as I, through a family trust, am a shareholder in Fonterra. I want to thank the Select Committee members and the officials, long-suffering officials that were taken around and round the paddock many times, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure you're pretty aware, with the close eye you were keeping on proceedings there, of just how much that was the case. I won't make mention to the membership of the committee entirely because I fear I might be in breach of standing orders, but the wisdom, I guess, that was brought to the job by a number of members on that committee was well appreciated. As the Minister said, we received 99 submissions and we heard 43. The impact or importance of this decision on New Zealand Inc., and the previous speaker touched on that a number of times, I don't think can be overstated. This is the largest company in New Zealand. It is the biggest exporter in New Zealand. The industry itself as a whole, including the independents, is by far the biggest part of the New Zealand export industry. So getting this right is hugely important to New Zealand Inc., and not putting up any barriers or other such that might stand in the way of that type of growth is absolutely essential. So why is the legislation needed, I guess, is the question, and where did it come from? Well, I think it's worth reminding those that might be listening to the debate that it actually came from the industry itself. Fonterra, over a number of years, had a look at its capital structure, identified that it potentially had a substantial redemption risk, and came to government seeking some kind of redress through the legislation that's before us to introduce what they describe as a permanent capital model. And so that is where the concept of trading amongst farmers was born. And as the Minister rightly stated, and there is confusion amongst some of the shareholders of Fonterra and the farming sector at large, this is enabling. This does not require TAF. If the farmers themselves decide and the Board of Directors themselves decide on the 25th of June this month not to proceed with TAF, then it won't proceed. But in the view of the committee, we worked, I guess, tirelessly to achieve a structure that would allow the company to carry out that wish, if that is the majority view of those that are part of that decision making. The legislation should not be, Mr. Speaker, a political football, and I was heartened, I guess, by the fact that there is still some hope in the committee stages of getting Labor across the line. I was disappointed to hear the Honourable Shane Jones say that he would not be supporting the legislation at this stage, because I think it would be much more enduring if we could enjoy cross-party support for this legislation. So I look forward to the amendments that may come forward from the member or from the Labor opposition in this regard, and certainly on this side of the House we'll be seriously looking at those amendments and taking them into consideration. I'm aware that all members of the committee and many members of Parliament were lobbied very heavily by all interest groups in the industry, all the stakeholders. And there was some interesting debate around what model might or might not work and why the state may need to intervene or otherwise in this general process. The only comment that I would make there, Mr. Speaker, is sometimes you need to look at the evidence of what's happened. And you also need to ask, I guess, the basic philosophical question of where does the state stop and where does the state start? Obviously, in the case of Fonterra, it was a construct of legislation, and those of us that have been part of the industry for our whole entire lives, in my case, and certainly was here at the time that the first bill was passed and debated, we understand absolutely that this was a construct of legislation, and because of that, there are going to be some regulations placed on what was at the time of its formation about 90% of New Zealand's total milk processing. Now I understand about 86 of farm gate collection of milk. So it gives the entity, Fonterra, known as New Corp at the time, a very substantial, I guess, stake in the total industry, And so from that, of course, there is going to be some regulation. Should be widely acknowledged that that's going to be necessary, and I think by most it is. It's just a question of how much and where that stops and starts. And so the process that the Select Committee went through was to try and set those parameters. And I think recommendations that the committee made back to the Minister, which have by and large been accepted, and the officials' support on that was certainly well and truly tested. I think that they have ended us in a position where the compromise, which it overwhelmingly is, and I think we have to accept that it's a compromise, is about right. So we look forward, I guess, Mr. Speaker, with some enthusiasm to the process going through the Parliament. I would certainly like those who are considering this proposal now out there in the dairy industry land to seriously read all of the information that's been provided to them by Fonterra, not to make a rushed decision. Ask the questions of their industry leaders that they want answered and satisfy themselves. I'm confident, Mr. Speaker, that they will. Certainly the industry over the years has demonstrated it has the ability to do that. Nothing is without risk, but doing nothing also carries its own risks. And so consider all of the options before you make that call, but at the end of the day, make the call and move on. And certainly I want to recognise the substantial contribution to the Select Committee that was made by those that submitted to the Select Committee. We had a range of submitters, including Fonterra, of course, and others that gave us specialist advice from outside. We had an independent advisor. I don't know what else could have been done, to be frank, that would have given this process more scrutiny. There was suggestion by some that this was a truncated process. Well, the Select Committee met during recess. It met during extended hours. I thank the opposition members that were part of the Select Committee for their leave for that process to take place. The members of the committee at times threw their hands up in the air and said, "We've had enough." So that would indicate to me that we were not denying anyone the opportunity to work through the concerns that they may have. As I said at the beginning, sometimes we went around in circles a few times. That was, as far as I was concerned, designed to allow everyone that had questions opportunity to ask them and have them satisfactorily answered. So I look forward to the passage of this bill, Mr. Speaker. I am certainly curious to see what might come out of the committee stage, and I hope that members on the other side will eventually get to the point where, for such an important piece of legislation for New Zealand Inc., we can get cross-party support and this bill will process. Thank you.
A point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to a discussion just held between the whips, I seek leave for the House to rise a few moments early so that the next speaker can have their full 10 minutes uninterrupted.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there anyone opposed to that course of action? There appears not, so the debate is now interrupted and is set down for resumption next sitting day, and the House will stand adjourned until 2 p.m. on Tuesday the 19th of June 2012.